and I have to make sure I give myself permission to speak. So it's all the little details in life. Okay. One of these days I'm going to get it. It just won't be today. We are excited. We have Roy Darrington, and then Lucas. Lucas, you pronounce your last name Sharon? Sharon? Okay. Okay, thanks. I was like, I'm going to butcher this in public. Okay, so we have Roy and Lucas who are here, who are going to talk to us a little bit about special education, potentially some recommendations as we look further out. And so we're going to turn the study session over to them to present. Thanks, Roy.
She's choosing to decide whether she really wants to make that choice or not. Yeah. So, but yeah, thank you for letting us be here, and really our purpose in being here is at your request and to answer any questions that you have. So our goal today was to be very just kind of some high level general information about special education currently and where we're going. Director Sharon, who is the West Area Director right now currently, I asked him to be here so he can give you kind of more, this is what's really happening in the schools. So I'm going to be speaking more to an Alpine School District, kind of generally what we've been doing and where we're at. And then he'll jump in. But I hope you view this more as a discussion. So please don't hesitate to stop, ask a question, clarification, whatever you need as we're working forward. So when I came to Alpine this last year, so it's been about a year since I was brought to Alpine and hired, I was given 3 tasks and three directives for special education as the SPED director. The first one was to start working on resource allocation and distribution and setting up the Alpine School District so it's prepared for the split. And so we've been working, we were kind of the first department tasked with that at a broad scale. In doing that, we're working very hard to make sure that we can present to you budgets going into this next year so you can see what West Mountain's actual operating budget is going to be for SPED currently, and then decide how that looks for the ability to keep that moving forward. Is it sustainable for what you anticipate your new budgets to be? And we'll give you some examples of what that looks like today. But one thing that I think you need to be aware of is, where does scalability, the size of Alpine and 85,000 students, how does budgeting in specific departments scale out that either negatively or in sometimes positively is reflected when you shrink it back down? So one example of that is the system that we have to use in our district to track students' IEPs. The actual documents and student records is called Embrace. We're going to recommend that you maintain Embrace. It's, in my opinion, far and away the best system to use for goal writing. But as an example, it costs about $70,000 for Alpine to run Embrace. It's going to cost you about $50,000 to run Embrace. So that is now a triplicated cost, more or less, that every district's going to have to pick up. So some things work that way, whereas other things you may find out that, hey, in the West, because we are growing and we have a lot of size, like students per adult, you may find out that certain things proportionally, you're in a better spot than the other districts. And that's what we're hoping to give you once we get through the budget process for fiscal year 27, or sorry, fiscal year 27, which is next year's school year. So the second thing, and I think this is where Lucas will spend the majority of his time, is really what happens in special education. What is the purpose of special education? And one of the directives given to me is to create a more inclusive culture around special education. And what does that mean? Well, to me, it means better instruction across the board for all students, not just special education students. If you want to diagnose a general education issue, look at your at-risk populations and see how they're doing. If your at-risk populations are thriving and doing well, then your general education is going to be thriving and doing well. And so one of the aspects and one of our subpopulations is special education students and the needs that they have that are specific to them. So our goal has been this year to really come into a district that really has a culture of exclusion for special education services. And what I mean by that is special education is something that happens somewhere else, not the general education classroom generally. And we're trying to turn that around and ideally get to a place where every student, whether they have an IEP or don't have an IEP, their needs are being focused on and met as a practice of the general education teacher first, and then as needed, we work away from that, which that's what the law requires. It's ethically and morally appropriate, and it's legally appropriate. So we're working heavily this year and next year to move the needle on what does that mean and how do we do it. And I'm happy to report that 6 months into this school year, 7 months into this school year, we are far ahead of what we kind of mentally planned out in the process. This is the thing that Alpine as a district and collectively the 3 new districts have working for them that's really amazing. The best talent in the state. Like, there is no shortage of talent, but making sure that we're applying that talent in the right ways in every school and every classroom, that becomes the challenge that all of us are tasked with, kind of giving input and constantly setting goals and looking at what we're doing and trying to keep moving forward. So we changed the goal a little bit, or we moved the cheese, if you will, of expectation. And I'm glad to say that teachers, principals, schools are working very, very hard to adjust and move there with very little pushback, with very little. They understand the value and the appropriateness of it. The big question, which is fair, how do we do it? And that's where we, as a department, are working to backfill, and we'll continue to work to backfill, supporting teachers. And this is not a quick fix. This is a journey, not something that just happens overnight. And then the last thing, as I was brought in, I hired 3 new area directors with the intent, and I was given the task of prepare them to be the area or the special education directors for these new districts. Now, obviously, they have to go through the hiring process, and you have to make your decisions as new districts of how you're going to do that. But that building that leadership capacity, that's been the 3rd thing. So that's what our general task, or what we've been tasked with for the next 2 years. So for me, I always choose to go after culture first. And when I go after culture, what I mean when I say that is it's important that people understand why they're doing the work that we're asking them to do. And they have to believe in it. And it's not typically that people don't want to do good work, but oftentimes we have very different ideas of what is good work. And there's lots of ways to do good work, or to do the work that we're trying to do. So I always try to work at, let's get the culture right. And the culture that I'm trying to build is one that supports and believes that all students, not just special education students, but all students can thrive in a general ed classroom. That teachers can reach all students all the time. And then when they can't, that's when we bring resources in to support beyond that. But if our default is special education, they've got to go somewhere else. If that's where our starting point is, we haven't even given that teacher a shot or a chance to prove what they can do. To do that, I jumped into a couple book studies. And I don't know, Joylyn, if you want to weigh in. I invited all board members to join us if they wanted, and that's an open invitation. Our staff meetings are always wide open. They're monthly. Joylyn, you've joined us in some of these. What is your reflection on how we go about addressing culture?
It's really good. It makes me think a lot. It makes me want to change my internal practices. And to be honest, it makes me wish I could go back in the classroom and do a redo on some of the things. I
Right. And that's just it. This year and next year is a lot about just building capacity internally, not with necessarily the perfect strategies, but with the perfect mindset. The answers are infinite, and we have great people out in the schools that can solve problems, but they'll only solve problems that they recognize as problems. Currently, a lot of those things, they're just the norm. If they're the norm, there's no need to do anything different. So we're trying to adjust that. We use this book. It's by Dr. Leon Young. She's a friend of mine, a great author, great presenter, and a professor down at San Diego State University. Your student, my student, our student. I think the title is pretty self-explanatory. In the slide deck, I'm not going to waste the time by reading all the things. You have it, you can go through it. But the idea and the gist is, when we talk about our students and solving or meeting the needs of our students, that's exactly what it's not, that's my student and those are your students, or vice versa. Because if we're doing that, then we're bringing singular solutions to a broader problem that needs to be solved by the whole team, not just by one individual. This is for you to look at. This was handed out at the very beginning. This is a rough rubric, if you will, of kind of what we're trying to do to move forward. And how it's oriented is down the left column. You'll see that it has, some different environments like IEP goals, school culture and administrative expectations, the special education teacher, the gen ed teacher. And then it goes across and it says subpar, good, better, best. And next to that, it has kind of the court or legal components or justifications that have changed the expectations of what special education is. And that's something right now that as board members, I'm going to ask you to constantly be aware of. It takes one court case to change the whole landscape of our practices. And currently in Utah, we are facing major changes with some big court cases that are out in the works in special education. One in particular court case was in Andrews. It was 8 years ago that they finalized it. That completely changed the standard. So really, if you look at column 3, that actually now becomes where we need to be in our practices to be in kind of a legal safe spot. To give you an idea, we currently function across the district largely in columns 1 and 2. We're moving the needle. People want to do better, but first they have to know better, and then we have to support them to do better. And there's no problem with the wanting to do better. That's been awesome. But this is for you to look at, again, just to have as a reference. Here's our mission, visions, and values that we put together. This is work that's been ongoing for years in Alpine School District, but has never been brought out and put out into the schools. So we sent this out. We refer to this at the beginning of every week, at the beginning of every one of our meetings that we have, directors meetings, coordinator meeting, full staff meetings. I start and review our mission, vision, and values. Then we go to our goals that we set as a department. Our goals are directly tied to these, and then tied back to the coherence map for Alpine School District. But really what we're trying to focus on is really keeping a laser focus on what is it that we wanted to do when we were quiet and things weren't crazy back at the beginning of the summer. And it was easy to think, because when you get into the year and things become hectic and crazy like they are right now in schools, now is not the time to try to make things up or try to create goals and things like that. And our mission is very simple. We support the work of identifying student needs, and you will hear that a lot. That is a question that we beat to death over and over again. What do students need? Right now, we tend to ask the question this way: where should a student be located? And those are two distinctly different thought processes in how our teams go about supporting an individual student. And here's the big difference with special education. I wish we had this approach across the board. We think of education sometimes as everyone instead of each one. And that simple change in word is powerful. What does each student need? Not what does every student need. Todd Rose, End of Average. Great book. But if you try to build things to the average, you will meet the needs of no one. Okay? And it doesn't take a ton more work to focus on each child. So again, for reference, right now, so what we've kind of said is we are in preparing for the future as a department, but we want to thrive in the present. And that is really, really what we're focusing on. With that, I'm going to switch gears and let Lucas come over and talk specifically about what the work is in the West and kind of your current struggles, because each new district truly does have distinct and different needs. And while we get to kind of wash them together as Alpine, they will become just yours in 2 years. And we're trying to do that, so actually we're making it easy and treating it that way right now. We've really tried to segregate our department, so we're providing support and resources unique to the areas as they exist. So, thank you.
So just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm Lucas Sharon. I've been in education for about 14 years. I was a life skills teacher. Then I went to the charter world, and I was an administrator, a principal over there in the charter world. Didn't like it very much, so I came back to a district. I was a teacher at Canyon View Junior High in life skills for 2 years, and then now I'm in this position. So special ed has very much been my life, and I love it, and I want it to thrive and succeed. And in being in this position in the new Lake Mountain District out in the West, what I've noticed is this. One of the greatest tools that we have is our administration out here. In every single school I've been to, anytime we're talking about vision, where do we think special ed needs to go over the next 5 years? What goals do you have? Our principals out here are open, and they're ready to change, and they're ready to shift with training, with resources. And it's exciting to me that I'm not fighting an uphill battle, but instead we're collaborating. So looking at Lake Mountain School District demographics, roughly 26,000 students if you look at K-12 and post-high. That includes K-Tech, West, and Horizon. And approximately 10% of the students in Lake Mountain District have IEPs or individual education plans. Now, Roy touched on this. This has kind of been the big mindset shift that we are pushing in Lake Mountain School District in terms of special education right now. Special education is a service, not a place. As Roy talked about, oftentimes you'll walk into a room and you can say, hey, where's your special ed room? They'll be able to tell you right there. It's this teacher, it's this room, down the hall to your left. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is that special education doesn't need to be confined to a room. It needs to be happening across the school, and it can happen anywhere. Now, that doesn't mean that some students won't require some additional help away from their same age, their neurotypical peers. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have moments when that happens. However, what it does mean is that the default should be that a student is in general education, and then we look at data to determine if they need to have a separate setting for certain parts of their specially designed instruction. It shouldn't be you have an IEP, so you go to the special education classroom for all your services, okay? And that's in terms of legal, right? And that's called the least restrictive environment. For those of you who are special ed people, you know what that means. For those of you who aren't, it just means we need to have them with their same age, their general education peers as much as we possibly can, as long as it's the right decision for the child. So going to the next, one of the things I've been talking a lot with the principals about is called continuum of environments, okay? And we're better at this in secondary in Lake Mountain School District than we are in elementary. I thought we were really, really good at this until I got into this position. I was like, okay, we have some work to do, that's fine. I thought I was really good at this until I got into this position and realized I kind of wish I could go back to the classroom and have a couple do-overs, but that's all right. In terms of continuum of environments, what this means is that each school should have the resources they need to be able to serve all students within their boundaries. Currently, in Lake Mountain School District, we have students going to different schools based on their placement, right? We have, over at Mountain Trails, we have a special class autism. We have 3 special class autism classes out there. If you are placed in those classes, you go to that school. Yes, I am, but I'm using terms that we know. I got you. But yes, we do need to call them small group classes, but because technically resource is also special class the way that we're doing it. Thank you, Roy. But in terms of talking to the principals, when I went to each school and I talked to each of the LEAs or the principals about what their goals regarding special education were, and there were many of them who said, I need more training and resources to be able to support my special education students. Now, granted, sometimes that's just like asking for bodies to throw at problems, and that's not what we want to do. But in digging deeper, there would be times when a student would be, the data would show that the student should not be in a small group class, and instead should be in a have more of a resource services or general education with resource services. However, the student still had behavior needs, still wasn't quite ready in terms of behavior and social expectations to completely move out into the general education classroom. But because this school specifically, it was at Desert Sky, they don't have a small group class. And so they were not able to have a continuum of environments where a student could float in and out of the different services to be able to be successful. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't organize things a different way to be able to have their teachers go out and support all students. But in terms of having the resources at every school to support every student, we are separating students based on their placement at the current time, which I realize has been part of the deal. Sometimes it's more cost effective, sometimes it's more efficient. But if we want to move towards a true following of least restrictive environment, we really should start looking at how can we get each student to their boundary school with their general education peers. So that instead of general ed and special ed, we just have students who have needs, right? And every student has needs. So in looking at this, one of the recommendations that I would make is that we start looking at how can we get every student into their boundary school? What does that look like in terms of teacher support, in terms of para-educator support, in terms of location, to make sure that all students can be with their neighborhood peers in their schools? Yeah, I can tell you have a question. What's up, Melissa?
So I did hear your presentation when you did this before at the work session for Alpine, and I know you've updated it to kind of match our needs. I love this idea and the concept, and I love getting everyone to their neighborhood school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering how maybe you're going to get to that in the next slide, but how do you see that working in the West, where we're just strapped for classrooms as it is, and then to consider moving the special classrooms of everyone in their neighborhood school, which I love the idea concept, but I'm just curious conceptually how that physically might work here. Is that something you've workshopped a bit at all? I'm not trying to throw you on the spot, and if you don't have an answer, I totally get it.
No, absolutely. And for the most part, most of the principals that I've talked to, they've said that they would be able to make that work. For example, at Springside, we just added another emotional behavioral classroom, and they had a space that they could make work for that. However, I do think that it's not a small problem, but it is something that in terms of like FTE, we already have the FTE to fill every school. I've already done the work on that. In terms of space, I think that the biggest areas of concern for space are mountain trails. They already have 3 classes over there, so they would be able to maintain 1 or 2 classes depending on their boundary schools. Harvest, I talked to them and they said that they would be able to have some space even though they don't have a small group class currently. Desert Sky was concerned when I brought that up with Desert Sky. So that is something to consider. However, if we're going to do special education in a way that's inclusive and in a way that does respect LRE, saying, hey, you have an IEP, so you have to go to this other school, the recommendation is that we find a way to make sure that all students can go to their boundary schools and receive the services that they need. Okay. Now,
Are you trying to talk, Roy? You're not lighting. Oh, here, wait a second. Give me a second.
oh, sorry about that.
There you go.
No, I want to add, Lucas has done a great job explaining that. One thing again, even in how we're talking about this, as long as we consider a place for a service, it will be very difficult because what you're thinking in your mind is, well, it's a small group class in this school, therefore I have to have a small group class in this school. And the reality is not that. The reality is what are the needs of all students in a school, how do you then budget and divide resources and apply resources so they can create the environment in that school to meet the student's needs? The student doesn't always, in fact, almost never needs a room all to themselves. What they need is maybe focused attention, behavior plans that are being appropriately provided, a place to calm down or to self-regulate, those type of things. They need one-on-one work for their academics, but that can happen in just about any type of space. So one of the things that I've asked our team to do this year, we're not applying it in Alpine, but I had them go through it as a practice, and we will be able to present this to you at the end of budgeting, is what it looks like how we budget traditionally in Alpine, i.e. potentially moving to West Mountain, versus how you budget when you budget by individual needs, student by student. And what we're finding out and what I've been able to show and we can see is as they're doing their budgeting in the traditional way, which is this, a small group class, 1 teacher, 2 paras. That's it. I mean, that's the rule. It's written down. If it's written down, it's the rule. Versus the reality, then we have to come back in and sometimes it's 1 teacher and 4 paras. Sometimes it's 1 teacher and the fact of the matter is that teacher is fantastic and their students that they have in that small group class do not have the same needs as another small group class and they actually really don't need any other paras. But yet we have this rote formula for budgeting, whereas if you break that down and put it into student by student need, then you can articulate this school has this population with these needs. To meet these needs, it requires this much resource. And at the end of the day, the budgets look almost the same for a bottom line. Mm-hmm. So you have to change culturally, which is not black and white change. It's not a switch. It's a process. That's why we are not recommending any large-scale changes. We're trying to present solutions and inviting schools and principals to decide what they can do. And if they decide, then we're working hard. Lucas has been great at this. He's working directly with the principal, and the principal says, I can do that. My team is awesome. We can do it. So we're trying to slip them a little extra resource because we know they're doing it a little different. So I just want to make that clarifying point. It's a progression from where we're at to where we need to be, but resources will always be finite. They will always be finite. Yeah, if we had unlimited resources, we could do anything we wanted, but that's not the case. So it has to be strategic, it has to be meaningful, but I think the biggest thing is always remember if your child was the one in that situation, what would you hope the school was trying to do for them?
In terms of looking at the continuum of environments, then another thing that we've been working on in Lake Mountain School District is making sure that we are writing IEPs to address the critical needs of each student to be successful after high school. Rather than just focusing on, well, what do they need to learn next in the classroom? We're focusing on what is the critical need for this student for them to be successful, and then writing goals according to that, which then guides the entire IEP. So we've been focusing a little bit more on that. That has naturally pushed us towards having that continuum of environment where students are naturally able to go and receive their services in different locations so that we're focusing on the service, not the place. So that's another thing we've really been pushing. In the interest of time, moving on, some of the challenges, and you already know most of these, growing classes, caseload sizes, facility needs. Like Roy said, we don't have to have a class for each individual for all of these services. However, we do need to have space to perform these services for students who do need a separate environment. And that doesn't mean an entire huge classroom, but it does mean that we are going to need to look at that and work with principals to plan that out so students have access as needed. Another big one, and I know you guys are talking to ATEC West in February, but ATEC West is in talking to them and in chatting with them, there's some concerns in terms of facility and their needs, providing a transition program for students to help them be successful after high school. That team is awesome. And I know I'm sure you've all been out there or you've at least talked to them. They are doing so much for their students and they are so grateful for what they have. And in terms of facilities, to make sure that they are able to fulfill their duties to those students. In talking to the principals, this is not just a special education thing, but higher behavioral needs. Behavior is different even than when I started 14 years ago. It's just different than it used to. And so talking about making sure that we have behavior supports, talking about BCBAs, RBTs, acting not as Band-Aids, but acting as coaches to train people on how to correctly implement behavioral strategies to help them be successful. We, in Lake Mountain, with my BCBAs, I've been working with them to have them be in more of that coaching role rather than being pulled 70 different ways trying to fix every behavior. And what we're seeing is that teachers and principals are starting to come to them with solutions rather than just coming to them with problems. And they're asking them for specifics. Hey, we have this student, this is what we're thinking, what are we missing? They consult on it, they come out, do an observation, and then we're seeing much higher rates of return in terms of student progress. So higher behavioral needs, those need to continue to be supported. There's a greater range of needs in both resource and small group classes. As a life skills teacher, the level between my student who was in my classroom the most compared to my student who was out of my classroom the most, because we worked hard at Canyon View to do that continuum of environment. The needs are just widening between students, and the needs are widening. And the needs are growing for a lot of our students. And so we want to make sure that our students are getting what they need, but we also need to be strategic about it with our administration so that we're utilizing our resources and not, like I said, just, well, I need another para for this, I need this, I need this. Sometimes when we go in, and we've been working on this a lot, is it's not always a person that's going to solve the problem. Sometimes it's the way we're doing things. Sometimes it's behavior management in the classroom. Sometimes it's other strategies. So we've been looking at that. And that's something that we're going to continue and that I've been invited into the schools to do a lot of training on, is how do we utilize what we have better so that we can do more and then allocate as needed only when we've done everything we can. And we're seeing a lot of progress with that. One of the biggest things, and we've already, in Alpine, we had a situation with this in a couple of our middle schools already where we had to allocate more FTE because of growth. Junior high resource caseloads are out of control just because of growth, right? I mean, we went from, I think it was Vista, they got 35 students with IEPs within just the course of a few months of the start of the school year. So it's something we need to consider, we need to look at. Going along with that, and I have it right here, the problem with sevenths. I don't know how much you know about that. I was gonna say Melissa's smiling, she's been in the high school, she knows what I'm talking about. If a resource teacher hits a caseload of 43, they get paid an additional period. The problem with that is sometimes we are incentivizing teachers to take on a load that is more that they can do in order to make more money. And so we're fighting against ourselves a little bit. And so we need to look at that. I'd be happy to collaborate, but we need to look at what's a better practice to make sure that our teachers caseload that they can handle and not be asked to stretch thin in order to hit that mark to make that money. All right, so I've taken plenty of time, but who are we gonna be? In terms of Lake Mountain, the main thing is we wanna make sure that every student is just everyone's student. We're not special education students and general education students. Some students have IEPs, some students have behavior needs, some students just are just doing their thing and they just need occasional check-ins. We need to make sure that we see every student as an individual instead of as part of a whole group, instead of as part of a monolith. And that is what I think will be the main thing that will help us be successful.
Lucas, will you stay there just a second? I'm going to push back a little bit. I have lived here for 20 years, seen all kinds of fun stuff. When we moved here, we had just gotten a stoplight and we thought we were pretty hot stuff. just to give you like frame of reference on this one.
Nice.
One of the things that I'm concerned about, I'm hearing what you're saying about place versus service, but we generally do need a space to provide the service. OT, PT, AP, like we need a physical space. One of my concerns is just the amount of growth we're going to have. We're projecting between 900 and 1,000 students every year that we're growing, which is essentially a very full elementary school. So I hear what you're saying about it's a service, not a place, but also at the same time, we don't have spare closets. And in the last, I mean, when this next boundary study is done by ASD, in the last 6 months, in Lake Mountain alone, we'll have reboundaried 14 of our 16 elementary schools. And the projections in, 28, 29 show essentially every school being over 1,000, some of them kind of in scary numbers. So I hear what you're saying, and I think I'm open to the theory. I'm worried about the application.
For sure.
Another piece of it for me is one of the things that I have really tried to focus on is a level of consistency and stability. And I feel like we are moving our SPED students more than we are our gen ed students because we shift the program that was at Harvest is now at Riverview, is now at Springside. And EBD has followed that. Just in the time that like I've been on the board, they've gone from Harvest to Riverview to Springside. And I get it because those schools get full. At the same time you're saying Springside has room, I'm thinking they don't. Because when we do a boundary study in the next 6 weeks, they're not going to have space. So, like I said, I love the theory. I'm struggling with the application because we're boundary changing constantly, and we need to really find a level of stability and consistency, specifically for our SPED students. At the same time, I know that we have held classrooms on a stage, and we have turned a conference room into a kindergarten classroom, and I'm sorry. This is just sorry, I don't mean to scare you, Matt. That's not the intent of this. I know what this is, and I think there has to be a middle way.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about it's, a service, not a place, but at the same time, we need to carve out the right spaces to serve students because I love ATech West, and when we had to move it into the satellite off Vista, I know that they're storing a lot of equipment and struggling with space. So we need to design a facility that is specific to the needs of those students. There's no question. I don't think anybody here on this board is going to disagree with me about that. As I'm looking out, and I know how many schools we need to build in just the next 15 years, I'm not going to say the number publicly. I know how many schools we need to build in the next 15 years, and that's what is concerning to me, is the stability and the consistency. I don't like moving kids. I don't like doing boundary changes, but it's the reality of it saves us money, and we have to build less schools when we do that. It buys us time. I don't like that we're moving SPED students more than we're moving gen ed students, and we've got to figure out the solution because when we know that we're going to need to be boundary changing and building new schools, and this is the trajectory, I understand the theory, but we've got to work on the application because we are so different, and the sheer volume of growth we're going to experience in the next little bit, there's literally no model for it. We're going to double in size in Saratoga and Eagle Mountain. There's no model for it. And so I love this, but also we've got to be very intentional about creating a solid plan because when those schools get overcrowded, I've been in the space where you dump a portable and I'm not interested in putting SPED and portables on every site.
Right.
And I know that's not the intention, but too often that I think becomes the reality. So you and I are on the same page. We love the idea. I just am super practical about counting classrooms and making sure that we do something that's consistent and stable. And so we may disagree on how to get there, but that's okay because we can figure something out. Anyways, that was my long-winded speech of this is good and I have so many board members who now want to comment because apparently I started something. So just give me a sec.
Okay, sounds good. Can I respond to what, okay. I actually think that what you're saying and what I'm saying are closer than you think. I think what it is, okay, when I was a life skills teacher at Canyon View Junior High, my students were out of my classroom and I was going into classrooms to provide the specially designed instruction they needed. It didn't always happen to have to happen in my class. So I actually think that with training, with collaboration, with support from the board, from leadership, students actually can be with their gen ed peers more, which means that space, it will always be an issue in the West. In Lake Mountain. I'm getting used to that switch. I'm not saying it's not, right? But what I am saying is that if I'm doing my job right and I'm training teachers and principals correctly, then what that means is that we are utilizing general education classrooms to be able to provide specially designed instruction as much as possible. And if I'm being honest, I think that that is a weakness that we currently have, that we're not thinking outside the box. So while yes, we will need spaces to provide those services, I think a lot more students with IEPs could be included in these general education classrooms with the right training and with the right resources. And that would be my job, to be able to provide that training and to help the board in making recommendations. But yes, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that the West isn't exploding.
There are board members who want to chat because we started a whole thing.
I have so many things I could say, and we can have an offline conversation sometime, but I do love the part about seeing every student as an individual, and that should apply across the board. And I know that if you're using good teaching practices, if you're using good SPED practices, good ESL practices, help everyone in the classroom. So I understand that. But I do have the concern, as Julie, that I love the idea of thinking outside the box and incorporating the going to be as inclusive as possible, getting the classroom as much as great. But I'm also just thinking of, should we say, the OT, some of the other pieces, that some of the more specialized classrooms, I think of those like we had Horizon and ATEC, that kind of piece, they're going to need space, but it'd be nice to have them in their home school, but it also would be nice to have a consistent place so they have less transition and they have more consistency, because if they are shifting from school to school just to follow the program, that's not a routine that's helpful. But I have a lot of other things. We can talk offline another time, but I'd love to just share, but appreciate it.
Sorry.
That's fine. Are you saying that with no new classrooms, but just a change in the paradigm and some of the structures to support it, we can actually save space?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm saying.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You're saying we take the services to the students.
We take the students to where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, leaving them
And
in
and this is
in
the big
classrooms.
caution that, again, for me, it's easy to see because I come from a world where this is the norm, not the exception.
Ah,
So it's easy for me to see this, and in my mind, which my boss here, who has been my boss all year long, has heard so many times, I'm like, why do we do this?
okay. So what's the catch?
So, yeah.
But is it just paradigm change?
It
or
is.
Like
It is.
Like
There's so much, and that has to happen. Like, we have to build capacity. Lucas touched on that. I touched on it. This is not going to be a switch, like from one day to the next. It's building capacity. It's building belief, mindset, and practices. But I would caution this. The very conversation that the board is having in your wondering, which those are totally fair, if one of those were challenged by a parent, that conversation in and of itself would not win. It would lose every time. Because we're saying that we've already made the decision that we have to think about all the other students first, and then what's left over, we'll decide if there's room for a SPED, small group. That is a current practice, and to your point, that's why they've had to bounce around. I'm speaking in the rearview mirror. I was not here. I've just tried to get the information, but it sounds, what I've seen is exactly what you pointed out. And we've said no. No small group class is moving this year or next year. We're not touching them. They are where they are. They're going to stay where they are. We have invited principals, if they want, to go out and invite their students back to their schools from those small groups, if they believe that they can, and we can give them the appropriate resources. But it's not an idea of, well, we have all this growth. I'm thinking of Snow Springs currently with the 6th grades that we've had to move,
Desert Sky, yeah.
Desert Sky, sorry, thank you for the Desert Sky, where we moved the 6th grade over. They're packed, like there's no space. That is true, and you're gonna have to build buildings. But as we build buildings, if I said, don't consider a lunchroom, that would never happen. When you're building buildings, we have to say, we have to account for all students. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to have an individual classroom, but to your point, OT, PT, speech, it happens in every school in the district. There's not a school in the district that doesn't currently happen in. So those things are not spread out. Now, they're more intense at Horizon and ATech West than they are in our, and that should be the case. And yes, there should always be a place for special schools and for small group classes. It's not an all or nothing. And it is, I think, Julie, you make a very good point. It comes to a level of strategic planning. But as that strategic planning is happening, again, coming from the outside to bring what to me is normal thinking, my normal, not normal to the world, but my normal, another paradigm, my job is to say, we have to work with everyone to decide where do we want to be, and then work to understand how do we best get there. We don't marginalize what we want to be because it's right, true, and good, ethical, moral, and legal, because of other constraints. We have to consider those constraints. They are real, they are true. The growth is gonna be unprecedented. It has been. But now it's going to be kind of the biggest definer of the district, whereas before it was, well, out west this is happening, it's not happening in the south, they're going the other direction. It is all the district moving forward is going to have to deal with that. And facilities are going to be huge. And how do you pay for those facilities, and how do you build fast enough to even keep up with growth? We know that that's going to be an ongoing struggle. But as we're going to make decisions about what those facilities look like and what we hope they accomplish and what we want to happen in the classroom. All I'm saying is this should be part of that conversation. And it isn't an all or nothing or a one way or the other. But I would give that caution because we all are captive to our biases and what we know. And this is something that is very different for Alpine traditionally, which then has remnants of Alpine's biases trickle into what we will be and how we move forward. So I appreciate those concerns greatly, but I actually would say they would do the opposite. They would work to reduce loads of spaces, because it is largely, not every student, but the majority of our students that currently get pushed out into small group environments that are marginalized and bounced around to where there's an open classroom in a school somewhere, that would not happen as much because the home school would say, these are our students, and we're going to, now we're talking 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road to be.
So to go down this pathway, what resources do we need to start looking at and allocating to start having a mind shift and a paradigm shift?
So the big one is professional development. Our human capital, our human resource is our greatest resource. We can't ask teachers and paras and principals to dive off into this work and set them up for failure. Yes, there are actual physical needs, but we can show on paper, we can show you at the end of the budgeting session this year, in 5 months, 4 months, we'll be able to bring you the actual dollars and cents and say, we believe we could do it with what we have. Now, do it to be like as a beginning stage versus doing it at the highest level that we grow into. There might be a difference, but that's a discussion to look in your strategic planning and your budgeting down the road. But what can we do right now with the resources that we have? We're not asking necessarily for any major changes in resources different than what we've asked Alpine in this year's budget to bring forward, which is to trying to restructure some things, that's neither here nor there, but restructure some things in budgeting that allows you to see the real picture of what's really being spent for SPED services, not a shaded picture of what's being spent on SPED services with other dollars hidden in other places. And when I say hidden, that's not the right word. Just coming from accounts and from places that it doesn't automatically scream this is going to SPED. but it really is. The district is really paying it into SPED. We want to be very transparent for your benefit and to show you exactly what it's costing right now and have a whole year of working with ideas so you have a good launching off point as a district when you take over your own budget and make your decisions. That's what we're working on now. Beyond that ask, we are not asking for any specific resources at the moment.
So I know this year we spent a lot of time working on the leadership team. What would be the natural next step for next year as we move towards
So our
this
goal.
potential opportunity?
Yes, our goal as Alpine School District, with the idea of having every district prepared to go where they want to go, is to move from our leadership. We've been working a ton of time with principals, because principals, as goes the principal, so goes your school largely. So we are moving to get everybody that is in a place to support and reinforce or to build capacity of teachers at a place that next year we can start focusing on the teachers. So we're going to create complete professional development series that will start to build the capacity with real actual strategies, not just in special education. We are asking and trying to work across lines with gen ed teachers because, again, this is a process for the whole school because these students are first and foremost gen ed students. That is what the law states. That is what our job is. And the second we start with the idea that they're a SPED student, we have it backwards. So if they're a gen ed student, I want my gen ed teacher to teach them the way that they teach or they meet the needs of every other student until they can't. But I'm not going to ask them when they have class sizes of 30, 32, 35, 40 in some of our secondary schools to say, oh, and by the way, meet the needs of each student and we can't reduce your class sizes, or we can't give you strategies that are efficient, effective, and easy to put in place. Those are the things we're going to focus on. Not thinking we're going to solve every problem or be perfect at it, but our goal is to start some changes in mindsets and practices. Again, the solutions are not with us. The solutions are with the talented professionals we have in the schools, in the classrooms, but we have to support them, give them permission to fail forward, to make mistakes, to try to do great things, and when it doesn't work out the first time exactly how they want it to work out, nobody's there to do anything but celebrate that they're willing to try and get up and go again. And then at the end of the day, we can't afford to miss a step with any of our students, particularly in special education. We've got to maintain high levels of service.
Okay, I would love, I know this might be a little too deep, but I love the idea, and you talk about it being like a paradigm shift, that you've seen it differently. Can you just like give like an example of what it would look like? Like, and I know every student is different, so it's hard to give like a general example, but like in terms of like what you've seen, I understand pushed in the classroom. Does that mean like additional para support? Does that, what, and it depends on different for someone, I get that, but could you just give like a concrete, like one typical example, and then though it's not typical, just to kind of understand what you're looking at?
I'll try to give one, and it's been celebrated. You guys may have seen on the school's been recognized. They're recognized as an outstanding school in the state by the governor. They've grown their reading scores to the highest in the state. They're one of the highest performing schools in the state. They were on the front page of the Tribune, I believe, 2 days ago. From my previous district where I came from, and I've taken my leadership down to see them. One example, young student in that school. When they came into school, by all accounts, the student could not communicate, could not take care of themselves, could not move, could not do anything that you would assume would be that would allow them to participate with their non-disabled peers in any meaningful way. Fast forward to a team that decided we can do different. That's not where they started, it's where they grew to. That student now is completely, well, not completely self-sufficient, because the student has some physical needs that need support, that he'll never be able to take care of himself. But he participates in his equipment, in kickball, dances, can communicate, learns in class. The teachers kicked the paras out of the class because he was smart enough to know how to use the paras to his advantage.
I've seen that.
And the teachers caught on to it, but it started with a mindset and then years and years of practice. That is one concrete example. Okay, that's one concrete example. But the whole school is a representation of that, and it starts with one simple statement. This is my student. And that starts with the gen ed teacher. If you understand universal design for learning, that's a planning method. It's been around forever. It's not new. These are not new strategies. It's how do you apply your thinking. But if you believe, look, my class is so big and that's too hard, and if this student has an IEP, it's somebody else's responsibility, we've already set the baseline of what we can achieve. Now, I'm not blaming any one person for that. Again, we have to provide the strategies and structures for them to be successful.
Thank you.
Yep. And it's a journey. I just can't stress that enough. This is a journey. It takes time. It takes energy, but it has to be something we value.
Thanks, Roy. We appreciate you and Lucas and the time that you've put into this. Appreciate you being here.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was the last slide. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from board members before we break? Okay, we are finished with today's session, and we'll see everybody back at 6 for the regular board meeting. this evening. I'm going to call to order at 6:01 Lake Mountain School District Board of Education meeting held on Thursday, January 29th of 2026. Our first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Joylyn Lincoln, which is followed by an inspirational thought by Matt Isaacson. Please join us in the pledge.
Please repeat with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we just finished a work session from a couple of our staff from the district talking about special education. And I love some of the thoughts that they shared with us today. It was, in a lot of ways, about an evolution. You know, I think one of the core identities that you're gonna learn about this board and our vision for our district is that the only thing that stays the same is change. And in effort to change, we're doing it for the students. Things evolve, things change, the world changes, and so we're changing with them. The presentation today was all about doing what's right for the students, but more than that, they talked about doing what's right for the student. And it's the second time I've heard that recently. I met with a teacher not long ago, and he has this incredible program. And I said, so what makes your program tick? Like, how does it function? And he said, actually, it's a culture at our entire school, and it's unspoken, and it's not even written down. I don't think we've even talked about it, but if you ask any of us, I think we'd say the same thing. It's easy to say we do right by the students and we're student-focused. It's harder, but it's the right thing to do to say, I do what's right for the student. And when you make it about that individual, all the time, every time, it's sometimes not the easiest thing for me and not the easiest thing for us, but it's the right thing for them. And when we do what's right for the student, we do what's right collectively for the students, and everybody wins. So thank you to the work of the special education crew for their inspiration, for their tireless efforts to evolve, to innovate, and to do what's right for those students and for each student.
Thanks, Matt. We appreciate that. Okay, we don't have any community comments, so we're gonna end up moving along to our innovation spotlight. So for any of those of you who may be new to this experience, one of the things that we are trying to promote as a Board of Education is innovation in our new district. And one of the things that we're really excited about is how many people are already innovating in the spaces that they're in. We want to highlight those experiences and celebrate the teachers and staff members who are really taking care of the needs of students and looking outside the box. So we're excited to hear first from Jessica Stauffer. Jessica is one of our community outreach coordinators. And then followed by Jessica, we're going to highlight Kate Watson, who is one of our art educators. She's one of our BTS art teachers at Harvest Elementary. So Jessica, we'd love to have you come up to the podium.
I was going to say, is there any way to hook up for slides? Thank you. Thanks. Can you get it? Do you need my help? There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to have time to present tonight a little bit of information about the Community Outreach Program. I'm very honored to be here, and I'm sorry if you had to hear me already this week. So I tried to change things up a little bit, but I am excited to be here. I would like to quickly introduce you to our team out west. So if you'll go to our second slide. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to mention everyone's home school that they are placed in, but all of us have quite a few touch points. So starting out, I'm at Cedar Valley High School, and then next below me's Sadi Palacios. She's at Frontier Middle. And then we have Natalie Chadiez at Silver Lake Middle School. Or sorry, not Silver Lake Middle School, Silver Lake Elementary School. And then Cindy Pendleton, she's split time between Westlake and Vista Heights. And then Giselle Rios at Pony Express. And then one of our newest members as of January, I don't have her on our thing yet, but is Natalie Southam, and she's an intern at Desert Sky. And then, so most of us do assist more than one school. So we kind of have touch points all over this area out here. If you'll go to slide 3, I just want to quickly explain what the Community Outreach Program is about by starting with our mission. And this is a picture of a student who's carrying a lot of baggage around, which makes it difficult for him to function at school. And it's creating educational barriers that are difficult to overcome alone. So our mission as community outreach coordinators, trying to build kind of a community school, our comprehensive approach to education of our children, and this is our comprehensive approach to education of our children and youth. Schools together with communities must work to fulfill conditions that create the optimum chance for every child to succeed. The basic physical, mental, and emotional health needs of young people and their families are recognized and addressed. So this is what we focus on. So if you can go to slide 4, as we learn about the students that might be facing these educational barriers and what they are experiencing, we start with a game plan on how we can help. And we follow the community school framework model as a guide. This strategy transforms the school into a place where educators, local community members, families, and students work together to strengthen conditions for student learning and healthy development. As partners, they organize in and out of school resources, supports, and opportunities so the young people thrive. And so we follow this model, and I love that the center of it, it says, why do we do this work? It's all students flourish in thriving school communities. And then we build onto that with our next steps, which I will kind of talk to you guys about a little bit. But and then our frameworks are in that light blue on the outside edge there. That's got 6 frameworks that we usually try to follow to support our students. So if you'll go to the next slide. So when I started as a community outreach coordinator at CVHS in January 2023, one of my many first steps was to get to know the students and families. And after many interactions through resource referrals from staff and faculty and translation services rendered, I was able to start understanding what students and their families were in need of and what type of barriers they were facing. With the Community Schools Framework as my guide, I began to build an asset-based team with the help of all key players. These are some of the barriers, just a few, that we've started learning about out in our area out west that students and families are facing. And then we've kind of put together our teams of resources that we've been able to connect these families to, or that we've been able to partnership with to build some support in the schools for students. And then if you'll move to the next slide. Thank you. So this is my own personal, these aren't everyone that I work with, but this is a lot of people that I collaborate with. This is my partnership and teams that I've worked with in the schools. And first off, I just want to make sure that, that I do work with our admin team, our counseling team, our school-based therapists, advocates, teachers, and support staff, so that I'm getting those referrals, but also, back and forth, finding out if kids are doing better, if things are working. So we kind of have worked together to make this plan all together, these partnerships, and start working together on what we need to do to build student success. So a lot of these people have kind of helped me with different resources that I've needed for the students. Some have helped me with events that I've had. And I was going to say also helped us build some programs. If you'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is just some actionable data of what we've done at Cedar Valley High School. Just a little bit, just a small picture of what we've done, but I wanted to make sure that I was targeting some frameworks like we saw in that big circle. Expanded and enriched learning time opportunities. We've built a pizza parent and student study group after school, and that happens 2 times at the end of the term. And we have the teachers come, they help. We have the counselors come to help as well. And then we've had our clubs help. So National Honor Society and our Key Club, they've done service as far as tutoring and also helping to serve pizza and just help facilitate the whole event with me. And then also our Latinos in Action Club has come and they've helped to translate for parents or students that are struggling and need some help that way as well. We've been able to, last year, reach 846 students, and that's including our Circles Youth Development classes that we've also added after school in partnership with Community Action Services, and they teach about what students can do to prepare for the future outside of high school. And so prepping and helping them set goals and looking forward to graduation and then after. So, and then integrated systems of support. We also have a food pantry. We were able to fill 88 orders last year for students and families. And then also snacks daily for students, and our snack numbers have gone up immensely this year. And then holiday help. We've been able to help families during the holidays with our Christmas in the Valley program, referring families to Sub for Santa, and also in coordination with Tabitha's Way to get meals to families. And we were able to help 60 families last year at Christmas time. And also trying to create a culture of belonging, safety, and care, and that's another one of the frameworks. And we've been doing that by doing new student breakfast groups and inviting students that registered the month prior to come to these groups, and then we talk about the school and help them kind of be able to know the lay of the school a little bit better, where to find the counselors, where to apply for scholarships, driver's ed information, and then also giving the students time to build new relationships and friendships in that moment. And then one that's not on here is Cinderella Project. I was super excited about that. Last year we brought it to Cedar Valley High School. I felt like we had a lot of students that couldn't afford to go get the dresses or the stuff to go to prom, and I didn't want them to be left out. And that is another part of the culture of safety, belonging, and care. They could get dresses $20 and below, and there was students I was able to give vouchers for free as well. And then if you look at the table up there, that's at my individual school, 111 students / families were helped with individual help, care, and time. And so I've been excited about what we've been able to do at Cedar Valley. If you'll go to the next slide. This is also data in our area for out west for our team this year. I know our individual received services is a little high, but some of that has been tracked that it's not even student body members, it's been some members of the community that have come to some of the food pantries for help. So, but this kind of gives you an idea, again, out of all of our schools, the areas that we've been helping students and the touch points there. Then if you'll go to the next slide. This is just a little bit of actionable data for Cedar Valley High School. And I'm super excited about the community outreach efforts that we've been able to do and help improve student success there at Cedar Valley High School, increase student connection, and even when our school was at one of the highest enrollments in the state. I just want to share a quick story with you. I'll make it super quick because I know I'm running short on time. But I did share this on Tuesday, but I feel like it's shows how community outreach is helping reach our students. I first met Kay in March of 2024. She was new to the country, and she didn't speak any English. She came to me as a referral from the counseling office to help her family with the registration process. During that process, I learned that her family needed help with food, clothing, English classes, medical insurance, validating their work credentials in the U.S., and more. Their living circumstances of her family qualified her family for McKinney-Vento. I helped to connect them to the outside resources for support in their home. I helped Kay and her family learn the systems of the school as they have come to us with questions. I have connected them to support at the school. Kay had a desire to get the most she could from her high school experience. She has come with difficult barriers to overcome. But with the help of the school staff, her teachers, her counselor, and our community partnerships, we have been able to help her break down those barriers. Last year, she passed the WIDA test. I was super excited about that. She wanted to participate on school sports teams, and she's come many times searching for help, but we just haven't been able to get the insurance, and we finally were able to get her some medical insurance so that she could try out for a sports team. And she was able to secure a place on the ballroom dance team this year, which has been super exciting. She's on track to possibly graduate early next year, and she is working to receive her seal of biliteracy. Having these resources available to help her family and a support team in place to help her realize her dreams has been crucial to her success. And I'll just go over super quick the next few slides. I just wanted to show some of our integrated systems of support that we've had out in this area. Just within this last year, we've had three different vision clinics held at our schools, and we've been able to see around 30 students at each one of those schools to be able to get them glasses, an exam for free, glasses for free. These are students that wouldn't be able to afford it themselves. And that was with partnership with Eye Care for Kids. And then our next slide, we also have been doing some expanded and enriched learning opportunities, and also the focusing on the culture of belonging, safety, and care. And this is kind of some of the different groups that I've been working with at Cedar Valley High School. And I'm excited, we just started our next Circles Youth Development class yesterday, and we had 17 students that started with us again. So I feel like we're getting them some great prep for their future. And then the next slide, we have multiple different student and family engagement events going on at the schools. I don't have all of them listed. Frontier Middle School has a great program they're doing with parents called Involucrate. It's Get Involved, and the parents are coming, and they have partnershiped with Meta and got a Meta grant, and they've been able to get Chromebooks. And so the parents have this goal that if they go through these classes, then they'll get a Chromebook at the end, and they're learning about Skyward, also helping parents that they can fill out resumes, job applications, but also learning like kind of the systems of the school. So they've got a plan in place, what they learn each time they meet. But just some great family engagement opportunities that we've had to get families into the school and feeling a little bit more comfortable, but also our students as well. So, and next slide. We also have integrated systems of support in the schools as school food pantries. So I don't know if you guys were aware of that, but we have them at Vista Heights, Silver Lake, Frontier, and Cedar Valley High School. And every one of those pantries is being utilized to its fullest. I'm excited about that, that we are able to help families that can't afford transportation to just be able to come to the school, get food, or we can help do deliveries. My last thoughts, again, I just wanted to share that each member of our team is working on targeted frameworks at their schools with their faculty and staff and students in their vision and focus, and that their families and students are receiving the supports that are crucial to their own personal success. Thank you guys so much for your time tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica. We really appreciate you. It is amazing what our community outreach coordinators can accomplish. And Jessica has been vital in that. She was kind of the first one out in our area, and it just expanded from there. And her leadership, her drive, her willingness to meet individual students, like, I'm just constantly impressed. And yeah, the work that you do every day really matters. And your ability to connect with students and families keeps kids in schools. It provides them amazing opportunities. I just, even just some of the classes, right? Like the Pete's and Parents piece, I've seen like how many kids participate. The support for the English language classes for adults, I know, has been phenomenal. It's been an explosive growth experience, and now is, picking up in other school locations. So just incredibly impressed with you. We really appreciate you.
I just have one question, Jessica. One, I love what you do, and I've seen it. But seeing all the needs that you shared, if anyone in the community that's watching this would like to help out in any way, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you to help out? Or how can they help out? Because I'm sure people will see that need and go, oh, I'd love to help. How can someone help?
I was going to say, first off, we do have on that
Jessica, could you go to the mic so those at home can hear you?
So that slide that I had that had all of our pictures, we do have QR codes on that. So I was like, if you ever want to reach out to me, I will email it right to you. Yes. Okay, perfect. I will do that. And then maybe I'll add the QR codes to that. But you can scan actually, I have a different flyer. That one is to do, the QR codes are to do orders for food pantries. But I do have another one that has the QR codes so that you can donate to our food pantries, and it goes directly to our food pantry account with Alpine Foundation. And then we're able to just check out a card at the school and go purchase things that we do get food from, like donations, but we also do get food from community outreach services. So if we're missing certain things that they didn't give us rice or things like that, then we can go and use these funds to supplement what we're missing in our food pantries. Other ways to serve, we always love donations at the school. So I was like, if you, my Cinderella project that's coming up, if by chance you happen to have formal wear that's just laying around in your closet and you don't want it anymore, men's dress shoes, women's dress shoes, formals, things like that, just come and donate those at Cedar Valley High School in the counseling office. But I think most of all, if you have a school that you're interested in, I will get them the information, then you would be able to reach out to that coordinator to see what needs they specifically need at their schools, and you can help that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Jessica. We appreciate you. Kate.
my presentation will probably be a bit shorter because my notes are actually in my slides. So I am absolutely winging it, and so I'll be looking at that and hoping I'm saying the right thing. Anyway, so if you'll hit the first slide. So my name is Kate Watson. I have dedicated 26 years so far to teaching in Alpine School District, 25 of those as a visual art teacher. 20 of them here in Saratoga Springs at Harvest Elementary. I am part of the OG original faculty there, been there since it was built. I helped them inspect the kiln room when they were inspecting, made them move some things. My educational journey began with a Bachelor's of Science in Elementary Education, certified 1st through 8th grade. And then that went on to a Master's of Art in Art Education. I also hold 2 endorsements, one in K-12 Visual Arts and one in instructional coaching. Besides teaching, I also volunteer as part of Utah Art Education Association. I'm on their board, and about 3 years ago, I was the president of that association. In my personal life, when I find the time, I'm a portrait artist in oils and watercolor and a ceramic artist. I find that the arts have transformed my life, and so I look for ways to help it transform the lives of my students. So why do the arts matter? First, they reduce absenteeism. Students are excited to come to art. They want to be there. When my clay project comes around, kids freak out and parents email because we're going to be gone. Is there anything we can do? And so we work around that. But when the arts are in the school, the kids want to be there. So absenteeism drops. The second one is that arts can deepen the core when it's integrated. Julie mentioned I am a BTS teacher. BTS stands for Beverly Taylor Sorensen. It is an arts learning grant funded through private donation and the legislature statewide. It provides highly educated arts teachers in the elementary school. So I'm a visual art teacher, but BTS teachers can be dance, music, theater, visual art. It could be any one of them. I happen to be visual art. BTS has deep research in how integrating art into the core can benefit student learning in many, many ways. Third, the arts develop creative thinkers, helping kids to think outside the box and to solve problems in imaginative and innovative ways. Next slide. Okay, let's talk about my research for a second. So for my master's, I researched general educators' personal artistic confidence and how it relates to their willingness to teach art in the classroom. I interviewed a lot of teachers about their own personal life experiences with art and their willingness to teach in the classroom. And what I found was if they had something between 4th and 8th grade has happened, and if it was a positive thing, they had a growth mindset about art and they were happy to incorporate. But if something in their own life in that time frame had been a negative reaction of some kind, they developed a fixed mindset about art and they weren't willing to do it. They weren't willing to integrate it. They weren't willing to even come to free art lessons I was giving to after school. They weren't willing to do any of it. And so I started looking deeper into child development in 4th through 8th grade. And what I came to realize was that this is that moment where children stop turning towards their families and they start turning towards their peers. And they start self-comparing to peers, or they get hypersensitive to what the teacher might say. And so a teacher critique might be too severe for them to handle, or they're comparing themselves to their neighbor's picture because everyone's making the same thing and it's easy to see who's good at it and who's not good at it. And so they would form a fixed mindset about art. So then I started thinking about, is this just art? If it's a child development moment, it's everything. So that means every content area in 4th through 8th grade, these children are going to create either a growth or a fixed mindset. And that will endure through adulthood. How many adults have you heard say, I couldn't even draw a stick figure if I tried? I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. I have 2 left feet. I'm not coordinated enough for sports. I'm just no good at math. I just don't read much. It happens in that 4th through 8th grade window. So then I started asking myself, as part of my research, what is it that teachers are doing? What can we do differently? Will you hit the next slide? So, I'm not sure if that slide's going to be helpful to you. I probably jumped ahead of myself. What I came to realize was a few things. We need these kids to not be making the same thing as each other. They all need to be making original art. Why don't we skip this slide and go to the next one? I think it might be more fun. I hope. Sure, that'll do. They need to be making original art. They need to not be copying what the teacher is making. They should not be comparing to one another. They need to learn the skills and the dispositions, certainly, but we need to give them the freedom to express themselves and be individual at expressing themselves. I also was looking for research that would help me with this, and I came up with the Harvard Graduate School of Education's project that is the Zero project that led me to Studio Habits of Mind, that teaches children the actual processes that go through an artist's mind in an art studio setting. So I started teaching that instead. I found TAB, which is Teaching for Artistic Behavior. How do I teach these children to be independent learners in this room, to set up the room, clean up the room, find everything they need, be independent in the room? Let's go to the next slide. But the most important thing I found of all of it through my research was they need to fail. They need a safe place to fail and to learn how to adapt and how to deal with failure, and to know that failure is actually desirable and a part of growth and learning, that you have to be allowed to make mistakes whenever you're trying something new. And the arts create that safe space to allow them to do that, because they don't want to do that on their spelling test, and they don't want to do that in their math. They want a safe place to learn this growth mindset. So my thought is, if I can teach a growth mindset to these children in the art room, then it will apply to the rest of their lives, and they'll be able to apply it in math and in language arts and in science and on the playground and everywhere they go, that they will have the tools to know that, oh, I fell down, oh, I made a mistake, oh, I didn't pass that one, but it's a moment in learning, and I can keep going. I can pick myself up, and I can try again, I can pivot, I can do it. So that's what I spent the past 10 years doing, is just focusing on this growth mindset. And what I have found is that students that I have been teaching for years show much more resiliency than the move-in students who are new. They move in and they can't think for themselves. They're waiting for me to tell them what to do. They don't know what to do next. And so I think this is critical, that we need the visual arts in elementary school. We specifically need it in 4th through 6th grade for sure, because if we wait until middle school to try to teach these dispositions, we've already lost some of them. We are playing catch up now, because they, in those early years of this child development phase, have already fixed their mindset about things. So I'm starting as early as possible. Technically speaking, I could teach high school if I wanted. I'm in the elementary because I want to catch this moment. I want to catch them and give them a growth mindset. Not because I want them to grow up to be artists. I know most of them won't. I want them to be able to thrive in everything by knowing how to fail and how to rise again. I want to thank you for listening, and I would invite you to come visit my classroom and come see what the kids are doing. Thanks for giving me time to share. Thank you.
I've been very fortunate to be in Kate's classroom. I think one of my favorite projects I've seen her do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, I think it was attached to like a science standard that had to do with animal adaptations about bioluminescent creatures. And so there were drawings when you went into the art room and the lights were off, but the black light was on, and all the kids were able to participate with like glow in the dark paint and draw and create bioluminescent creatures. And the way that BTS and the arts integrate the core standards so that students have a greater understanding of what they're learning in their gen ed classroom is really astounding. And it is exceptional teachers like Kate that make sure that we have a level of support for the arts and that students are actually acquiring additional knowledge. So thank you, Kate. We're incredibly grateful. Okay, next up on our agenda, we're actually going to give the superintendent, Dr. Carter, we're going to give her the oath of office. So Dr. Carter, will you front? Please raise your right arm. I state your name.
I, Vicki Carter,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations. You have to be centered because someone's going to say that we're not centered.
Yeah, right?
Someone's going to say the art
Right by the
teacher.
end, that's it. Put in. Great. Can we- Perfect. You guys are so beautiful.
Yes, and then we come up. Okay, I'm gonna get photos of your family, right?
You want to
It's just, no, I don't need to be in it. Anyone's close, but is your sister in there? Okay, so next up on our agenda, we have our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, so we have a motion by Joy Lynn. Do we have a second?
I second.
And we have a second by Board Member Judkins. Okay, so with a is there any discussion? So we have a motion by Board Member Lincoln and a second by Board Member Judkins. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that appears to pass unanimously. Next up, we have 2 discussion items. Policy 704, media and public relations. This is, this one's a discussion, so it's the first time it's coming before us. It's not an action item. Board Member Lincoln.
So those that are new to our meetings, we always discuss a policy and then we bring it back and make adjustments based on the feedback from the table. It's also an opportunity for the public to give feedback, and you can do that by emailing the board, and we will address those concerns and bring it back, because minds need lots of feedback and opportunities to share and to discuss. Good policy doesn't happen in isolation. So this is our first policy. This is media and public relations. It goes through just the policy of why it's important to have this, that we realize that there's an opportunity to communicate with our public and how we're going to do that. We have some definitions. The scope is this policy applies to the Board of Education district employees acting in their official capacity. That's really important that it's in their official capacity. And then all media and third-party interactions on district property. So when somebody comes onto campus, then it's going to apply. Again, we will link the references of FERPA and GRAMA and Utah Code, and then it goes through the policy provision. The board and superintendent's roles, the media and public communications authority, how we are going to do that. The superintendent serves as our primary spokesperson on operational and administrative matters, and then that our board speaks on the board president speaks on behalf of the board. And then both of those people have the opportunity to delegate. And then access on district property when that's appropriate, student and employee privacy, and third-party requests. The last 2 are how we're going to handle crisis communication. This one's really important. When there's a crisis, everybody wants to know everything and be the first in the know. Crisis communication, we need to handle the crisis before all of the communication goes out. So this is really important that when we are dealing with a crisis in our schools, we're going to inform that there is a crisis and that we're handling it. Then we're going to handle it internally and take care of all of the people, all of the bodies in our schools, and then we will hand it out. So if you jump on Facebook and you see stuff right away, remember that our policy is that we're going to inform that there's a situation, we're going to handle it, and then we'll inform back out. And that's really critical, because the last thing you want in a crisis is for 500 parents rushing a school. That creates havoc, and it doesn't allow for our safety partners in our police departments and our fire departments to come in. So that crisis emergency communication piece is really important. And then how we're going to handle records requests. The procedures are owned by the superintendency. We've drafted some. They may change that in the near future, and then they'll bring that back forward. But again, going through all of those different pieces. This policy will be considered effective when media and public communications are managed consistently with the policy. Student employee privacy is protected, and communications are not disrupting instructional activities. That's the primary focus, and that's how we're going to know when this policy is effective. And then our standards on this. And again, it's really important to know where you're going with the policy when you develop it and know how you're going to arrive at that situation and that you've hit it. Because if you're not in policy, if it's not working out, you have 2 choices. You can change the policy or you can change your practices. So this sets the benchmark law, and that we're not going to have any violations with FERPA. That's the Federal Privacy Act for students, and with GRAMA violations, we're going to respond to those requests. And then communication is managed in a manner consistent with the policy. So that's what we're looking at, and then we'll review this every 5 years. So now that we've kind of gotten the lowdown, let's have some conversation about what are good and what needs to be changed before we actually vote on this policy.
I always feel like I have so much to say about these. Okay, one of my first concerns is when it talks about the news media, and it talks about the definition of that as, someone who gathers and distributes information to the public through print, broadcast, or digital. I mean, like every Tom, Dick, and Harry has like a podcast or a blog or, whatever. I worry about how can we identify like legitimate news sources versus somebody with a microphone. And so I'm just wondering if we can tighten up the definition a little bit, because I don't know that we treat KSL the same that we maybe treat, you know, somebody who I would not consider maybe a legitimate news source. I'm just wondering if we can tighten up that one a little bit. I also, like, I get what this is saying as far as like covering employees and stuff, but I'm wondering about how this applies to the board. I get that we generally put out any comments from the board come through the board president, and they're the one that's kind of, it's their responsibility to speak on behalf of the board, but I would not want this to be interpreted as someone can express something on social media that's different from maybe a stance that the board has taken. I want people to still be able to maintain their First Amendment rights, and so I just want to make sure that there's a level of flexibility. And so like in the 1.2 under board and superintendent roles, it says, you know, individual board members don't represent the district unless expressly authorized by the board. I worry about how that one could be interpreted like at a legislative session if someone goes and testifies. I feel like every time I go and testify, I generally say like, I'm not here representing the board, but I wonder if that could be interpreted as, well, you can't speak because you're not representing the board. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
anyways.
I'll work on finding a balance there.
And then in 2.2, under Media and Public Communications Authority, it says that, you know, any of the media inquiries that are related to operations, employees, or students shall be directed to the superintendent. I think anytime we say the superintendent, we should also say like, or their designee. I also worry about this one, like, I'm just thinking about like when Unified Sports comes out, or like they interview students at state championships, like if we do a football game or a basketball game, like an FFA event, there are gonna be times where the media is there and that's not gonna funnel through the superintendent, but it's, you know, we assume that the media is coming and participating in those. So I'm just wondering if we can change a little bit of clarity on that one.
On that one, I have a question because this is a good spot to have that conversation. So in the definitions, we clearly say the superintendent of Lake Mountain School District or an individual formally designated by the superintendent to perform this activity, and then the accountability lies with the superintendent. That's been the process in several of our policies we've done. Would we like to move that more, that we include that definition when we utilize superintendent throughout the policy? Or do we like it in the definitions section?
I think it's fine to say it. I don't know if I love the idea of formally, because it is, does that imply that it has to be like, right, like we change job responsibilities all the time as needs shift. And so I don't know, I guess I'm not sure what formally means, if it's just something that's an administrative function, or if it is like we're passing, you know, an actual thing in a board meeting kind of a thing.
I think the formally is that there's a communication with the superintendent and that individual. It's not just a teacher deciding to speak on behalf of the district.
I think that's fine. The access to district property, where it talks about how there are heightened expectations of privacy. Is there anything that we need to add about an additional level for students who have 504s and IEPs? Because I wouldn't want a student to be identified who has like an IEP or 504. Anyways, I think we might need to tighten that one up a little bit. Oh, the other thing in 5.3, it says, right, you can't provide endorsements or promotional statements for third-party organizations during contract hours. I get that one, but also at the same time, I'm thinking like, okay, it's like when Meta gives out their grants, they're generally doing that during contract hours. A teacher could say like, we're grateful to Meta for the money, and that could be interpreted as an endorsement during contract hours. Same thing with even like UMEA or Principal of the Year or Teacher of the Year. Like there's a lot of third-party interaction that could be happening. And so I think we just need to make sure that there's a level of exception for those kind of things.
On that, I was trying to speak to the situation where a teacher is working on a book or publication outside of their job responsibilities and then promoting that by taking a video in their class. So I'll work to define that and separate that out.
And I think you would just say like, you know, something outside their job responsibilities. I think that's probably it. I do love the section you put in 6.1, 6.2, 6.3. We've seen that happen time and time again where, you know, parents get upset because their whole thing is, well, I need to know, my kid is texting me, whatever. And our response has always been, our first responsibility is to keep students safe. And that means there will be a delay in communication because we're making sure students are safe. It's not that we don't want to communicate. So I think that clarity in there is really, really good. Also in the crisis communication 4.2, I'm wondering if this could be interpreted like as a teacher, if you're sending a text message to like your spouse saying like, this is what's going on in my school, I just want to make sure that that's not being interpreted as employees still being able to communicate, you know.
I think on that one, the piece that provides that walks that line is that it could compromise safety.
Okay.
So texting a spouse saying, hey, the school's in lockdown, I'm okay, that's not compromising the safety or investigations.
Okay, those are my comments. Thanks, Charlene.
Okay, and then again, if there's people that are sitting in this meeting or listening to this meeting or reading the packet, if you have feedback on this policy as well, then we invite you to go ahead and communicate that with us, and we'll start to implement that. Should I go to the next one?
No, can I give some feedback?
Oh, I thought everybody was done.
No?
I like that you're not all done.
Sorry. Okay, just for clarity, we've talked about it before, and I'm still, learning to read policy as it relates to board content here. Can you outline the difference between policy provisions and policy procedures and how it relates to board action versus district action?
I sure can. So the policy procedures are the part that we own as a board, and that stays at the high level of why this is important and what are the strong fence parameters that as a board we set. The policy procedures are when the superintendent comes within that and kind of gets into more the how or the operations on the day. So we're staying at the higher level, and then the superintendent comes in a little bit lower. Think of it like as some nesting bowls, and they have to follow inside of each other. So this is what the board says, and then the policy provision or procedures are what the superintendent does. But they're put in the same form so that it's very clear to the public that this is the whole that the district has set on this, both at the board level and at the superintendent level. So the superintendent and their administration, if they come back after a year of operation under this and they say, you know what, this section here and student participation isn't working, we're going to make a change. They'll make that change internally, and then they'll bring this back to us as a board, just on our consent agenda, so that we're aware and that the community is aware that a change has taken place.
So the district has some flexibility to update procedures and then have us consent to that.
Yeah.
But there is no, say, adaptation on the provision section that has to go through board approval directly. Or they both have to be approved.
So when we approve it, we're approving as the whole document is, but the superintendent has the ability to and flexibility to take those provision section and bring that back anytime they see fit. The procedures.
Okay, so I echo the comment before. Anywhere it says superintendent, I'd like to see it say superintendent and or designated staff or department or communications group or whatever the language is there. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to clarify.
Okay.
Can we talk about policy provisions section 1? I'm going to identify just maybe 2 sections where it looks great in the context of this, but there's actually going to be a policy that specifically outlines, for example, 1.1, the board government model of governance. It's really part of 201 that we talked about last time or whatever. I don't want to create interdependencies that make it a little clunky later. So I just strike, even though it gives context here, it's actually voted on in another policy. So I would just strike 1.1 if you're amenable. And then I would call out that same thing in 3.1. I expect that we'll have a policy at some point that talks about access to district property and access from third parties or outside people to district property. Okay.
I think too, on the 1, that's really admissible. On 3, do we want to ever talk about, because this is a communications where the press comes, I'm not sure the press is going to read multiple policies.
I expect that 3.2 and 3.3 are fine.
Okay.
still outlines their access as being limited and under supervision. I just don't want to include additional pieces that would then be overlapping in other policy places. And then help me understand when a principal can give voice to a request and/or permission for, like in your example, somebody wins a regional championship and the press are there and they're really excited. Is there any provision that they say an administration on staff can say, give that a thumbs up so they can interact with the media in that situation?
I think that would be delegation on part of the superintendent, but I can tighten that so that that's clear here, so that our principals have a really good feeling of what they can and can't do.
Cool. Okay, good luck with that. I don't know how.
See what happens. I'll meet with
I read it and I'm
superintendent.
like, I don't know how to say that. Thank you. And, okay, so last point was in 6.2. Nope, I'm good. Never mind. You covered that one. Okay.
Okay.
In terms of what Matt was saying about the not duplicating policies, my suggestion is maybe the balance would be able to have a link to the policies that cross-apply, kind of like how you have the laws at the bottom that apply, have like these cross-noted policies fit, so it's the access to the property or it's the roles of the government could be on there. That's a lot of cross-referencing work, but I think that would be a way that it can go back if you need it, and if press goes to it, they have a hyperlink to it, they go and see the privacy piece. Which is just an idea.
I think that's a great idea, and I think we'll see that as we roll out more policy. In the beginning, there's not a lot of cross policy because the other policy doesn't exist yet, but we will get that taken care of.
Okay, any other discussion on this policy, or are we good to move on? Okay. Next up is policy 203, board member code of conduct.
It's listed both. I crossed wrong numbers.
Okay, 203/202. I don't know what the number is. It's fine. We're not voting on it tonight, so we're good. I'll go ahead and start because I always have a lot to say. Under the definitions where it talks about conflict of interest, I think I'd like it to say, something that could reasonably be perceived to impair. I think we should say influence. Because anyways, I just think that's a wordsmithing thing. And then the section 2 under the policy provisions where it talks about conflicts of interest and disclosure. In 2.1, that board members shall avoid conflicts of interest, I think we need to say they shall disclose. Because like for elected officials, there are going to be times where you have a conflict of interest and you are legally required to disclose them. It's not that you can't hold office if you have them, you just have to tell people you have them. And then I think in 2.4, when it says when a conflict exists, the board member, and I think instead of saying shall withdraw, because I don't actually think that's legal, I think we can say they're encouraged to withdraw. Because like, for example, legislators vote all the time on things that they have a conflict of
So,
interest on.
One thing on that too, the rules for legislators and the rules for school board members as far as conflict of interest are slightly different. So I'll double check that, but it was my understanding that they did need to leave the room. But I
Okay.
will double check that code and then
Follow up,
highlight.
perfect. And then,
Look like to withdraw? What does that mean? I
so
talk,
basically you just recuse yourself, but like,
sit here and listen to the discussion and just say I'm not voting, or get up and walk out of the room?
either.
I'm just wondering
You,
what.
it's either. Like you can't comment at all. If you're recusing yourself, you can't participate in the discussion at all. You don't vote.
Would it be appropriate to just say, you know what, I'm just going to leave? I mean, I think as a protection for myself,
Yes.
I would rather say, I'll just be out here and when you're done, I'll come back in type of deal.
That would be appropriate.
I mean, it won't matter and we don't need to distinguish that.
I mean, unless you're sending like baseball signals to some of the other board members about how they're supposed to vote, you're in the clear. So, okay, we're fine. Now everyone's going to be watching for the signals. Yep. Someone's analyzing the videotape right now. Authority and role clarity, 3.2, where it talks about how individual board members have no authority to bind the board or direct operations outside of official board action. Yes, but. 3.2 under authority and role clarity. I'm thinking about specifically when we go into an LBA or we're a local building authority. Technically, that's not the board, it's a separate authority. And so could the argument be made that we're not acting officially as board members because we have to actually go into a separate meeting and that whole thing? LBAs are fun. And then the other thing I think about it is in terms of RDAs. Like, for example, when we had to take the vote in Alpine regarding the Texas Instruments deal, we got 2 votes. And those people were designated to give their votes, but they were not voting as official board action. They were voting as individuals representing the board, but it wasn't in one of our board meetings. So I realize I'm kind of nitpicking about this a little bit, but there's a couple of circumstances where you could argue those are outside official board action, but are still relevant to the situation and potentially.
Can I make a suggestion there? Would that be something like maybe unless directed by board leadership or authorization for board leadership or something there of having like a designee or someone designated from the board in that case? Or
It could work for
a little more clear versus like, because none of us could just go meet with a builder and like make a plan for a school, that kind of piece. Like maybe we can crispen it a
So
little
that
bit.
would work for the RDA. I don't think it would work for the LBA. Sorry, we're going to use a lot of acronyms. It won't work for the local, it would work for like a redevelopment agency, like that would make sense. But when we go into a local building authority, we're technically a separate entity outside of a school board, which is why we have to open and close the meetings very specifically and follow legal requirements. So like, I'm thinking of that one in particular.
So I kind of on that, because I thought of that a little bit, and then I thought of outside of official board action, so the board could make action that you're assigned to the RDA, but I will work on that just a little bit more.
And then the other one in 7.2, board members shall not post or communicate information that's not been addressed in an open public meeting. I struggle with that one a little bit because technically when we had Frank come and do a presentation about the high school and stuff, like I could share information on social media that maybe has not been shared yet in a public meeting. And I think any of us could do that, whether it's, you know, whatever, right? Like I met with a legislator, I met with whoever. And so I just worry that that one in particular, 7.2, is really restrictive. And so whether it is, you know, we encourage board members, you know, to share information that is whatever. I just worry that that one's going to lock us into, there's a lot of things we don't do in our job. I mean, my argument is our job is 1 to 5% is actually the public stuff. There's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes. And if we can't share anything that's not been shared in a public meeting first, it really limits our ability to communicate with the public. So that's it.
Thank you. A couple of similar comments from the last one. I identified just a few places where I think it'll overlap with policy that's either passed or coming. So for example, like the last half, can I just say like in this, the policy statement, I think could be a little tighter and just having less words.
Okay,
Like a lot less words. For example, the first sentence, we could just say like to govern public schools with ethics and duties, or ethics and integrity, or I don't know, something. And the second section is kind of the similar, kill the whole last section. So that's just kind of my feedback there. In particular, therefore, the Board of Education adopts, blah, blah, blah. We start to get a little bit out of scope for the policy itself when we talk about role clarity, collective responsibility, affirms principled unity of purpose. It's all going to be covered in 201, 200, those kind of policies. Conflict of interest. I think you had. I need a bingo card when you get all of my feedbacks. You got a whole bunch of these. Let's see. 1.3, the second section about avoid both actual and perceived conflicts of interest is either a 1.4. It's actually two separate thoughts, or it can be covered down below in conflict of interest itself. So a little redundancy there. 2.4, that shall is the one that's really bothering me.
okay. Just that one shall, or?
Well, there's a couple shalls, but that one in particular. Okay, and then three, section three. This is one I think is also covered in 200 or 201. I don't know that you need the section three at all. Authority and role clarity is really not a code of conduct piece.
Okay.
4.4, could we substitute, sorry, I don't want to wordsmith, but value for respect? Yeah, I really appreciate that you've included the idea that we're going to identify different perspectives and listen for understanding, in particular as we're communicating with the public. And I think respect is a strong message there. And my idea for what Julie brought up with section 7, and maybe it could say sensitive information, that we wouldn't release sensitive information that hasn't been otherwise discussed in open meeting.
That might just solve that.
Yeah. That is all.
One thing while everybody else is still thinking, do notice that there are no procedures in this one because this is a policy for the board, and that is why that section is missing.
So as I've read over the policies as we've come to our school board meetings, this question kind of came up, and now that we have a superintendent, kind of raised a surface for me. So it really hit me when I was reading under policy provisions 3.2 and 3.4, where it says individual board members have no authority to bind the board or direct operations outside our board. And I'm just kind of, we are the staff, and we're doing a whole lot of work right now. So I kind of feel like, is this, and the same thing happens in 4. It says you have to work through this, or we need to work through the superintendent for information concerns, operations, and that kind of stuff. And we haven't been doing that because we didn't have a superintendent, and now we do, but she doesn't have a staff. And so I don't know, so is this, are we building these policies for 2027? When, I'm just wondering.
That has been a philosophical struggle for me on these board ones, because I think we need some board policies and some norms for us to operate for the next 18 months, knowing that once we become fully operational, there is going to be a slight shift. So if you have ideas on how to kind of do that philosophical, I thought on some, and again, this is just sharing some thoughts out, like having some policies that have an effective date of July 1, 2027, and then also having some that maybe have an expiration date of July 1, 2027, to thread that needle of knowing that right now we're doing both governance and operation, and then on July 1, 2027, we're going to do governance, and we will have a full staff with all of the help that our superintendent needs to do the operations.
I hate to have us do double the work.
I know.
And so I'm wondering if we write the policy as if it is July 1, 2027, when we are functioning, and maybe between now and then, we have open discussion with the superintendent as we work through it. I don't know how to best do that, but I hate to have us, okay, we're going to write them all right now, but then they all change in a year and a half, and we got to do it all again. I hate to do that.
And the other thing we could do is we can just keep track of those changes that need to be affected so that we have the policy that's in play for today. And then we also have knowing what those changes need to be really easily identified in a policy that we then just approve on July 1, 2027. So then it becomes a replacement for this policy.
So I don't know what we're suggesting.
Oh, no, I think it's a good thought, and I think we'll keep working through that. And now that we have a superintendent, we can start bouncing some ideas, and I think we'll see some clarity in the discussion over the next month.
Okay.
Looking at section 8, regarding like being able to keep everyone on the same page, and we've talked about this, that it's usually kind of common protocol that if a board member is reaching out to the superintendent or district staff for some reason, that the common protocol would be that the superintendent and the board chair would likely be in that correspondence. I'm not sure if that's something you want to put in there, but it's kind of keeping everyone on the same page. And the other piece, kind of looking at Matt's future redundancy kind of thoughts, I'm assuming we're probably going to have a policy regarding superintendent evaluation. I'm fine if we have that line there, but I'm also just considering of like the future linkage of what would go, that would tie to this.
Okay.
So I've just thought
Oh, sorry.
I just want to express how excited this makes me to have this discussion. I know for all of you that aren't policy geeks, I love the discussion and the development of policy because I think it doesn't happen in a vacuum. So thank you for your comments, and I look forward to incorporating them and bringing them back.
Thanks, Board Member Lincoln, for organizing that. Okay, we have one action item this evening. It's Resolution 2026-001, the disposition of school buses. Just to make everyone aware, due to the code that passed SB 188, if there is any disposal of assets after this, the creation date of the, no, is it creation date? Yep, creation date of the district, it has to go through a process. And we have roughly 25 school buses in Alpine that we have to get approval from Lake Mountain, Aspen Peaks, and Timpanogos for to dispose of. These are buses that we refer to as being in the boneyard. Essentially, some of these buses have not been running for 3 years. They are, a couple of them are buses that don't have air conditioning, which we want to dispose of because we want to make sure that every bus has air conditioning. It's a specific issue with our special education students, and they need to have access to that. So all 25 of these buses are requested to be disposed of, but they have to get concurrence from all 3 districts, which is why we're seeing it on our agenda. So do we have a motion to pass Resolution 2026-001?
I move that we pass Resolution 2026-001, disposition of school buses.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Isaacson and a second by Board Member Saucer. Any discussion?
Madam President, excuse me. I'm used to saying chair, I'll get there. Madam President, I just want to thank the transportation staff for the level of transparency they've provided the board in trainings, as well as just this document that's very explicit to specifically each bus and why. If you've seen the board packet, you will see like no air conditioning, hasn't the mileage and everything. I just want to thank the transportation staff for all the details they provided the board, whether today or being previous. Just for that.
A question I have is, do our buses have heaters? All of them?
Yes.
Yeah? All right. I got the nod from Eric. So it's the air conditioner. We want to make sure we have both? Okay.
I work for transportation. So I'm just a bus aide, but I have a bus, my current one, the air conditioning doesn't always work. It takes about an hour to heat our bus. So the first route we have in the morning is not warm, they're freezing. So yes, we can get rid of the buses that have heaters. And some of the tanks, even on some of them are too small, so we have to fill them up even more, which costs more money.
Yeah. So we just need to resolve this one. Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Isaacson, a second by Board Member Saucer. All in favor of approving Resolution 2026-001, the disposition of school buses, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that appears to pass unanimously. Okay, next up we have board member reports. Board Member Saucer.
I was the chair of the Superintendent Search Committee, and I just want to formally thank everyone that was part of the process. Over 30 community members that met to help review the applications. We had board members here manning the district office from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. for about 5 days here, so we all were doing our time, as well as reviewing the applications. And I also want to thank the public that came to the public forum that we had just a week ago. And I just want to thank everyone that was involved and also everyone that applied, and we're great. I have to admit, I'm super excited for the team we have, and my shoulders felt a little bit lighter this week, so thank you.
2 things. Actually, I'll let Board Member Strong, if you want to give we're talking about branding, and that's the next step in that process. Do you want to talk?
We are in the process of finding our logos and our purpose and a big reveal, and we've been meeting with different companies, and our committee, Matt and Julie and I, are trying to narrow that down and see where we want to go. We'll work with our superintendent and run things past her and see where we go. We're in the process still.
Yeah, we had a naming committee, a group of community members that helped us, narrow down the thousands of options thousands, right? Yeah, the thousands of options that people submitted for possible names. And we're going to roll that committee right over into branding so they can be continue to be part of that process as we seek to give the name some color and some visual representation. The other thing is, I have to say we had an incredible group of, Board Member Sosser talked about, an incredible group of candidates that applied for superintendent. We could not be happier with the level of enthusiasm, the reach that our search, just how far it went. People applied from other districts, from other states. It was thrilling to see how many people wanted to be a part of this effort and part of this district. There was some late nights and some long discussions. We wanted to be prepared for the possibility that we find not just an amazing superintendent, but what if we had 2 or 3 that were phenomenal? What then? And we've heard since that we've had a lot of feedback like, how did you do that? So we're thrilled that Dr. Bollinger is here with us tonight as Deputy Superintendent. We prepared for that eventuality, very, very closely guarded eventuality, that if we had just the perfect combination of 2 incredible educators, could we get them both? And we did it. And we're so excited for that. So it was some last minute scrambling, and not only were we able to have one, but to have two incredible people join us today was a dream come true.
A quick update on, and I guess I'm going to start with jumping on with the superintendent search. I was also, and we're very pleased for many reasons in terms of being able to maybe get a little bit more sleep and rest a little easier. But to reiterate what's been said already, I don't think that we could have had a better outcome and a better team to add to the team. It just, I've said it the way I've said it many times, like it was magical. Like, and to know, and I want everybody here to know, but also our new team to know, like, the support and the excitement that the board has in what is being created here, something special. And so we are all just thrilled to have grown our team a bit. So super excited. So in terms of a board report, I am over creating the foundation. And so that application is in process. There is a lot to it. And so there's a lot going on, and it takes several months in order for all of that process to be completed. But I wanted everybody to know that that ball is rolling. And as we have more information and as that is being created, then I will continue to update.
Okay, so I always feel like I'm the Debbie Downer in the group. It's ledge session. I'm going to say it with enthusiasm. It's ledge session. As of last night, there were 657 bills that have been drafted and numbered. We're on day 10 of 45. So I would encourage everyone to reach out to your legislators, to read some bills, to watch what's happening, because one of the things that I tell high school students when I go in and speak to them, like for government and citizenship classes, is that government is a group project and you get the government you deserve. So I would encourage everyone, participate in the process, find out what's going on. There's lots of resources out there, and please participate in the process, because it's our responsibility as citizens to participate and make sure our elected officials know what we think. So I would encourage everyone to participate in that. We do not have need of a closed session tonight. And so do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
No one was hopping in. It wasn't lack of me. I was just watching for a button and nobody was, you guys were just wanting to hang out. Okay. So we have a motion by Board Member Isaacson and a second by Board Member Judkins. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your attendance.